everybody and good morning. Welcome to the Citrine Palace. It's Vervain and it's a really beautiful morning. It's actually before 9 a.m. I actually woke up before 9 a.m. Aren't you proud of me? I'm proud of me. I'm excited. It's gonna be a wonderful day. So I've had some requests over the last couple months to do a video or a series of videos on like my pagan path and how or my spiritual path and how I found it, and like how I've arrived at where I am now and like where am I now. And I think I answered some of the questions about like I think I answered some questions that would be relevant to that in my witchy 40 questions tag a while back, which maybe I'll link below. I don't know. I feel like I always say I'm gonna link things below and then I always forget. But it's such a big topic that I don't even know how, like I've really been thinking about this. Somebody requested the video and I was like, oh yeah, I'll see if I can get it up next week. And then I just sat down to think about like, okay, what was I gonna talk about? What was I gonna say? How did I find my spiritual path? What is my spiritual path? And it's like, that's a lot of questions. That's some big questions. And I don't actually like know how to answer. Like I'm so in my own path that I take so much of it for granted. Like it's hard for me to know actually how much of it you guys see on my YouTube and on my Instagram and stuff, because I feel like I'm so open. But then I also like, I feel like I've always been really open, or I've always felt like I've been really open. But after I know I've started like writing a little more in depth on my posts lately, and of course I wasn't really doing YouTube before, and I go back and I look at my old posts and on Instagram, and it's like I wrote like this much on a post, and I'm like, oh my god, what is this? Like, who is this girl who's posting these things? I'm like, no wonder you guys don't know who I am. I wasn't sharing any of it, or like, no wonder you guys don't know any of these things about me, because I wasn't sharing them like I felt like I was, but I wasn't really. And I don't know, it wasn't really intentional. I don't know, anyhow. So I try to be more open with you guys, and but because I'm so ingrained in my own path, if you will, it's hard for me to know even like what you guys already know and what you don't, if that makes sense. But here's something concrete that I thought that we could do today to kind of examine my spiritual path, is to go through my old kind of book of shadows. I didn't actually call it that, but we'll get to that. Which and talk about, I thought I could read a little bit from it and then talk a little bit about like what is of it, what's in here is stuff that's still true for me, and what of what's in here is stuff that I'm like, that's not part of my practice anymore, not at all. And I will say, like, I haven't opened this book. I think I looked through it just a little bit right after I filmed that 40 Witchy Questions video, but I didn't go all the way through it, and I haven't like really looked at it in years. I made this probably about 4 or 5 years ago while I was living in Waco after college, and I still think it's really beautiful. I'll show you. I mean, I put a lot of work into it, and oh, okay, that's something that's still true for me. We'll get to that. Anyhow, so I figure we'll just start doing this, and one thing that's definitely already different about my path, obviously, is like I don't really use a book of shadows. Mostly because I think I always really liked like the idea of this witch, just of being this witch who could just pull any answer off any shelf and like bring together, and I guess like I do kind of do a lot of that, but I guess I thought that all the things that you could know about magic were somewhere in books. I'm very much a Hermione. If you can't learn it out of a book, I might believe it's not real. It's not true anymore, but it took me a long time to move out of books. I read a lot of witchcraft and paganism books before I ever did like any real magical or spiritual experimentation, and it's really only been like I've considered myself pagan for at least 12 years now, but only for maybe like 4 or 5 of those have I been practicing paganism. Does that make sense? Like, I did a few things here and there over the 7 or 8 years before that, but nothing like magic and spirituality were not like integrated, woven into my life. They were just like things that were there in the back of my head and that I thought about a lot, but I didn't really know how to integrate them. I liked doing witchy crafts and things. I read a lot of tarot. That was really the main expression of my magic for a long time, was I read a lot of tarot, and I read about a lot of magic. And so because I had gotten so much of my information from books, and I thought that a lot of it was like encyclopedic, like read this in a book, learn this, memorize it, do it correctly, get results. It was important to me to have my own little book of things that resonated, that I thought were true. I don't actually know if any correspondences ever made it in here. It looks like this is more of a almost more like a spiritual text book, which is actually really interesting, because seeing that, like, I might actually go back to using this, because it looks like most of the texts in it are things that I almost still believe. Let's see. So we've got Lady Vervain's Book of Light and Shadow, and I called it that because I've never liked Gerald Gardner. I did consider myself a Wiccan for a long time, but I've never liked Gerald Gardner, and I've never really liked the term Book of Shadows, and like he literally just made it up. I think he saw it in a magazine for something totally unrelated and was like, oh, that's a cool phrase. That's what I'll call my spell book. And hey, that's valid. If you see some cool thing in a magazine and you're like, I'm gonna call my spell book that, that's totally valid for your practice. But I didn't feel like that translated through and was valid for mine. I don't know, it didn't make sense for me. And I felt like it was unnecessarily dark, and I felt like I really liked the analogy of how you can transform shadows by manipulating light and by manipulating the solid objects that cast the shadows, but you can't ever like directly manipulate the shadows themselves. But you can pull other strings elsewhere to change and alter the shadows. And so that was kind of how I had thought of light and shadow relative to magic at the time. And much like there are magical forces or things in the world that you can't just go out and put things where you want them, but you can pull some strings and influence the way that things happen. And that, to me, it was like the play between light and shadow. And so that felt like a much more appropriate name to me than this, and that's still true. As for calling myself Lady Vervain, I definitely would not do that anymore. That just doesn't resonate with me anymore, and it's not because there's anything wrong with calling yourself Lady Vervain or Lady whatever. It just doesn't resonate with me, and I don't think it fully resonated with me then either. I think I just felt like I wanted to put something there. Okay, and then we have Greetings, Wanderer. I did not plan to like show you all of this. Oh, I actually shared this on my Instagram. This is just like a little, like a book curse, if you will. I'll read it to you. You have stumbled on this book, so now you face a choice. Steal just one dishonest look, or keep your honest eyes. I respect your privacy. Your secrets are your own. The path that's fair and honest is the path that I walk down. But you, if you desire, can choose now to read on. The choice is yours to make. As you will, it will be done. However, be aware, my friend, that this volume's contents are not meant for your eyes, so you face curse and consequence. I was really proud of that. I'm still really proud of that. But it does seem awfully dark. Well, I mean, I just was like, I'll let most people go through my books and things. Like, I'm not that secretive or anything. And honestly, anything, and I think I've said this before, anything that I am more secretive about, I'll tend to write in runes or like in backwards cursive or whatever. And like, at that point, I feel like if you're willing to go to the effort to translate it or to put it in a mirror and read my messy handwriting, like, whatever. You deserve to read it at that point. Like, you're worthy of the secrets contained within And yeah, I just feel like it's rude to read people's private writings without permission. And obviously, if you had my permission, this curse doesn't affect you. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. I wrote a good long piece about my purpose, and let's read that. To bring good to the world and all in it in all feasible forms, because I recognize that having been created for/in this world, I bear that responsibility. These forms include but are not limited to love, first and foremost, listening, creation, speech, song, education, activism, assistance, and my own health and happiness. I would add tea to that list. I would add tarot reading to that list, although I suspect that I kind of already assumed that it was included in like the love and listening and speech part. Yeah, I feel like I stand by that, and I would just add a few specifics to it. I don't really have anything to change about that. Okay, number 2. To live honestly, openly, in tune with the universe and its natural forces, and with harm to none, accepting that each moment is a learning experience as well as an opportunity to succeed. So, I was a Wiccan when I wrote this, and I feel like that sounds really noble. To live honestly, absolutely, still, openly, still, in tune with the universe. I still say that. I don't think I was really doing that then. I mean, I don't know if I'm like fully doing that now, but I think that the way that I'm living now is feels much more in tune with the universe and spirit and the natural forces around me than I know I was then. But even then, I know I was like open to seeing omens and following the path, but intuition was hard for me. I was a real skeptic, man, and I've only really had my skepticism seriously challenged since after I moved to Austin, so there's that. Now the bit about and with harm to none, that sounds really noble, and I'm all for like cause the least harm possible. But I just don't think that, I think, so the Wiccan read, the part of it that I can still agree with is like, and it harm none, do what you will. Like, sure, if it doesn't hurt anyone, do whatever you want. But that doesn't mean that, like, don't do anything at all that will cause harm to anyone at all. Because, like, actually, there's really only a very limited number of things that you can do that actually don't cause harm to anybody. And in this day and age, it's like if you use toilet paper, like, I don't even know where that comes, you know, like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like every little thing in our world today tracks back to like somewhere along the line, some harm was caused. And like, it would be great for us all to be able to live off of our own little piece of land in total integrity and like taking only what we need and whatever, but that's just not the world that we live in. And I would like to like continue to move closer and closer to that in my life, but I've also accepted that I'm not at a point where I'm qualified or have the resources to solve all of the problems that result in me being a part and parcel of the whole set of systems that cause some amount of harm as a byproduct. Also, I've done a lot of philosophical thinking about magic, and it's like, well, if you're gonna do a spell to get a job, like, on the one hand, great, awesome, like, how could that possibly be bad? But it's like, well, you don't know who else is going in for that job and how badly they need it, and like, you don't know, like, if you cast that spell and then you get that job, like, you don't know who else you're taking it away from. You know, job applications or a job search is kind of a zero-sum game. Like, there are only so many positions in a certain field, in a certain place, and there are more than that, usually, people looking to fill it, and, you know, not everybody can get it. And so if you're doing a spell in that sense to help your luck there, like, relatively someone else is going to suffer. And you don't have to actually change anything directly in their world, but it's going to cause some negative effect. And And I guess that's part of why I've stepped away from doing as much spellcasting, although I never did a whole lot of spellcasting. But I do a lot less spellcasting and a lot more prayer now, I would say, because so often either I'm going to make that call and I'm going to do that spell because I want that job and that's really important to me. And I feel, I've pulled cards and I've spoken to my gods and I feel like that's the highest good for me and all involved. Or more often these days, honestly, I'll just speak to my gods and I'll be like, hey, I would really like this. This is what I'm willing to sacrifice for this. But also, like, the thing that I really want here is non-specific. So say the thing that I really want here is not this job. The thing that I really want here, and I'm just using jobs as an example here, obviously. The thing that I really want here is a job that is like XYZ, that allows me to do XYZ, that has these benefits and this kind of pay and this kind of work environment and blah, 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 blah. That's what I want. And also, like, I want everyone involved to, like, receive what is for everyone's highest good, and, what can I do to be a part of that patterning. So you could say I don't disagree with the Wiccan read insofar as if it harms none, do what you will. I just don't feel like that's a whole lot of useful advice because there's very little that actually harms none. And I think that once there is some amount of harm being caused or some amount of negative consequence involved, then it is, like, really seriously your responsibility to think about that before you participate. And I think that that's pretty much 99% of the time. Yeah, and then again, my views towards spellcraft versus prayer have changed a lot. I'm way more into prayer than I used to be. 3, to love limitlessly and without shame, and to communicate that love in whatever way is most appropriate. So this definitely comes out of the fact that I have been actively polyamorous for at least the last 6 or 7 years. And I stand by to love limitlessly. I stand by to love without shame. And I guess I stand by and to communicate that love in whatever way is most appropriate. It's just a question of figuring out which way is most appropriate. I'm still polyamorous, but I have a lot of thoughts about that. And maybe I'll make another video about that. Because I have a lot of questions in my head about, like, I've been asking myself, I've been struggling, I've been wrestling with a lot of questions in my head about, like, is polyamory actually okay? Is it actually moral? What are the actual, like, long-term consequences of living in this way? And I think having lived in this way for over 6 years now, I may be qualified to talk about that. So maybe I'll do a video about that. Let me know if you'd be interested. Otherwise, I'll probably delay it for a really long time. I might delay it for a really long time anyway, just because I'm slow at these things. Purpose part 4. To see the beauty that lives in everyone and everything, and to do my best to show that beauty to those who want or need to see. Yeah, I absolutely stand by that. 5. To maintain my own mental, spiritual, physical, social, environmental, and emotional health to the best of my ability, and to aid and support others in their efforts. Yes. I stand by that. I also think that maintaining my own mental, spiritual, physical, social, environmental, and emotional health to the best of my ability is a lot of work and really hard and, like, way more of a process than I processed when I wrote that down, and I feel like that alone is, like, enough, man. But yeah, okay, so that was the whole section on my purpose. I'm a little, I thought there would be more in here that I no longer resonate with. But here we are at the Wiccan read. And this is actually not the Wiccan read, because the Wiccan read is that little 8-word thing that we already went over. This is a slightly altered by me version of a poem called The Reed of the WITCHY. I wrote the Wiccan read, but the poem that this is actually from, or like altered slightly from, is called The Reed of the WITCHY, and it's from a very specific tradition of Wicca and it's been popularized, but it was written for a very specific tradition. And for that reason, there are parts of it I've never really understood or resonated with. And I kind of, because I was a Wiccan at the time that I wrote this, I think part of me kind of thought like, oh, if I write it down and I contemplate it, eventually the mysteries will reveal themselves to me. And maybe that's true. And there's definitely like things in here that I still resonate with. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll pick out some pieces. Live ye must and let to live, fairly take and fairly give. Fair. Cast the circle thrice about to keep the evil spirits out. I mean, that probably works. I'm gonna be honest. Most of the magic that I do is folk magic, and I don't use circles. I do use circles sometimes, and they do work, so I'll go for that. To bind the magic every time, let the spell be spake and rhyme. I mean, I dig it, and I definitely used to value that more than I do. If I'm chanting or something, like I'll try and come up with something that rhymes or at least has a good rhythm to it. But like I said, most of the time it's way more important to me to just speak very clearly what it is that I'm requiring or requesting from the universe or from my gods or whatever. And like, I think it's way more important that my requests are accurate and specific than that they rhyme. Soft of eye and light of touch, speak little, listen much. Stand by that. That's a heathen thing too. Okay, here's this one. I'm gonna try to pronounce this. Jushil. That's how I've read that it was supposed to be pronounced. The one that looks like Deasil. Jushil go by the waxing moon, sing and dance the witch's rune. I don't know what the witch's rune is. I know a lot of runes, but I don't know of any of them that are called the witch's rune, and none of them are songs, or like they can be songs, but anyhow, that was one of those that I'm just like, I don't know what that means. Also, like, I don't have any, I don't know, like, I'm like, go clockwise when the moon's waxing, go counterclockwise when the moon's waning. That's the next part. Widdershins go when the moon doth wane, chanting out the rune of bane. And I guess just what that means would just be like, clockwise and the waxing moon are both growing magic things, and like chant out the things that you want, the witch's rune, during that, and then like going clockwise and the waning moon, those things go together, and those are reducing and banishing things, and chanting out the rune of bane is like, so chant out the things that you're releasing and getting rid of. And so if that's just like standard magical guidance, I can dig it. But again, I'm like, my magic is very folk magic. And this is a little ceremonial for me. And nothing against ceremonial magic. Like, I always really wanted to be in like a very theatrical coven and like do all these elaborate dramatic rituals with song and dance and theater and costume and all the props and tools and things. And you know, I can invent those all day in my head, but like the people that I've actually resonated working with and the practices that have actually like resonated and worked with me just don't, or worked for me, just don't look like that. And I'm fine with that. So that's that. Then there's a bunch of things about winds. Those things never really made sense to me unless they're just like correspondences, but still I'm like, whatever. When you truly have a need, hearken not to others' greed. Fair. Like, deal with your, like, put your own oxygen mask on first, you know, like they say on the airplane. With a fool no season spend, lest ye be counted as his friend. I stand by that. I absolutely stood by that. That was like, well, this has always been one of my favorite verses. Merry meet and merry part, bright the cheeks and warm the heart. There. Mind the threefold law ye should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. That shit I don't believe in. And we can talk about that next, because I actually have the law of return in here on the next page. I see it. When misfortune's at your gate, tarry not in worthless wait. Good idea. True in love ever be, unless thy lover's false to thee. Which, like, I don't know, I don't feel like your lover being false to you is a good reason for you to be false. I feel like fine, you know, if your lover's false to you and you don't want to deal with that shit, like, end the relationship. But there's no reason for you to be dishonest about it. That's how I feel. And then finally, 8 words the Wiccan read, fulfill, and it harm none, do what ye will. And we've already talked about that part. Okay, moving on. Here we have my version of the law of return, and I think I actually wrote this. Yes. and I'll just read it to you. It was, I really didn't like the, I really, really, really did not like the Threefold Law. Call me nitpicky, but it's a direct contradiction of basic physical laws, like the conservation of energy. Mostly the conservation of energy. That's the one that really gets me, because it's like, no, everything that you put out does not multiply in threes, because if it did, all energy would constantly be tripling, and it's not. The laws of thermodynamics are very, very clear that energy is conserved across space and time, and that energy does not disappear, or it's not created or destroyed in any reaction. It just is transformed and moves around. And so already I was having trouble with the Threefold Law, and I didn't believe in that, and I wrote this instead, and I'll read it to you here. It's called the Law of Return. Of your actions ever wary be, for all that derives returns to thee. Water will wet, fire will burn, and all ye beget alike will return. Which I kind of still agree with. I mean, water will wet and fire will burn. And the first part of your actions ever wary be, for all that derives returns to thee. It's like all the consequences of your actions will come back around to you. But you can't just say, if you do good things, you'll get triple those good things back. If you do bad things, you'll get triple those bad things back. Because it's like, well, if you do one good thing and one bad thing, it's not like you get back 3 good things and get 3 bad things back. It's like you do some good things and you do some bad things, and some good things happen to you, some bad things happen to you. And also, if you do only ever good things, still bad things will happen to you. And if you do only ever bad things, still good things will happen to you. What is it? The rain falls on the deserving and the undeserving? That's not how it goes. I'll put the Bible verse up here on the screen, maybe. I've been quoting a lot more Bible verses lately, too. That's a thing about me. Anyhow, I believe in natural consequences. And I believe in the consequences of our actions and the responsibility that we have to take the potential consequences of our actions into account. But I don't believe that it can be as simple as good begets good and bad begets bad, because I don't think you can divide things into good and bad. I think there are a lot of things that are good sometimes and bad sometimes, and I think a lot of it's about context. I guess I feel like Wicca, for me, and a lot of the things that are part of Wicca, and that were part of my Wiccan practice or belief system, they resonated with me just enough to invite me to start asking my own questions and seeking my own answers eventually. And it took me a long time to actually start doing that, and I have been doing that, and since I started doing that, most of my Wiccan practice has kind of fallen away, because it was a lot of structure that was put there by people who asked their own questions and got their own answers and wrote their answers down, and their answers, I'm sure, were great for them, but they're not the right answers for me. The next things that I have in here are, and I'm actually not going to read all of these, maybe I'll read one of them. Here, I'll read the first one. I have poems in here for all 9 of the 9 noble virtues, which are taken from Asatru, or like modern Norse heathenism. I mean, they're extracted out of ancient Norse heathenism, but I think the list of 9 virtues is a more modern thing. I'm not sure that existed as a list in the lore. Anyhow, and I wrote a poem for each of the virtues, and then I also wrote one poem to help me remember all of them. And I still hold these virtues very dear, and I came to bits of Norse paganism through an ex-boyfriend, actually, who is still, I still think very highly of this guy, and and he was actually the first person that I ever, like, did magic with, or did ritual with, and I just remember we did, like, a blot or a symbol or something together by a tree at his apartment, with his other girlfriend, and it was just really, really wonderful and pleasant and magical to be in a space with people who like understood and relate and resonated with the part of myself that needed to be there in that ritual. So that's like, because I know the question I'm kind of supposed to be answering is, how did I find my pagan path? And so that part, literally through an ex-boyfriend. And he, you know, passed these 9 virtues on to me. Not like I got my virtues from him, but like I got the list through him. And actually, we ended up, I broke up with him because I felt like he wasn't living into them. And I felt like I was taking away his focus, and like maybe if I just stepped out of the equation it would be easier for him to live into them. And maybe that's true. I don't know. But I know that I'm in a good place now. And I know that I still believe in these virtues. I'll read the one that's got all of them in it. Honor first and above all. Courage to fight for the right when you're called. Truth, because no one deserves a lie. Fidelity, between you and I. Discipline, to set an example. Self-reliance, because I am able. Industriousness, for making do. But don't forget the final 2. Hospitality, to stranger and friend. And perseverance, to the very end. And I absolutely believe in all 9 of those virtues. And those are... like I look for those as I read the texts now, like the Old Norse lore, and I look for those as I'm studying the runes, and I try to live into those. I try to remember them and to recite them and to check in with myself that I'm... And having this poem also like helps me remember them. Like I actually do, I think, honor first and above all, courage to fight for the right when you're called, truth because no one deserves a lie, fidelity between you and I. Discipline to set an example, self-reliance because I am able, industriousness for making do, and don't forget the final 2, hospitality to stranger and friend, perseverance to the very end. Yes. Okay, I'll read the truth one because I think that's like, truth I feel like is maybe, I know honor's the highest of the 9 noble virtues, but it's because, I think it's because the other 8 all feed into the honor one. I feel like the first virtue that even allows you to approach the others is truth, and so I'm going to read the poem that I wrote for that one. A false tongue is a wicked tongue. Speak only that which is true. Lying first to others leads you to lie to you. And she who lies unto herself, her own progress impedes. The woman who is honest is the woman who succeeds. Still, do not fall victim to the lies of lesser folk. Their falsehoods do not merit any good you might have spoke. And actually, I'm not sure how I feel about the end of it. I'm still not, I think I wasn't sure how I felt about that bit of advice at the end when I wrote it. But it's very much extracted from the lore, and it was my intention in writing these poems to keep the meaning of the virtue true to how they're represented in the lore and in the texts. And then to, again, like, maybe I don't get it now, but I'll contemplate it and I'll figure it out. And I guess actually the only part of that I don't like right now is just calling anyone lesser folk. I guess what I should have said maybe is like, still do not fall victim to the lies of less honest folk, although that doesn't, the rhythm's not right. Their falsehoods do not merit any good you might have spoke. And I think that's actually fair counsel. Like, if, you know, you can offer up all the truest, most beautiful pieces of yourself, but if somebody is, like, actually using falsehood, like, actually meeting you in falsehood and potentially, like, trying to bring you down, because that's, like, what else is the falsehood there for? It's like, either they're trying to protect themselves in a way that probably doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense, or they're like actively trying to, I mean, in any case, they're actively trying to deceive you if they're being false with you, and it's just you know, it's not a good idea to just give of your magic blindly, or to just give of your secrets blindly to people who are only going to use them against you, essentially. And so I guess I would still stand by that. And I stand by all these virtues. Maybe should I do a series of videos where I just read these poems and talk about them a little bit? Maybe I should. Maybe I'll do that. Okay, what's in here after that? The 42 Ideals of Mott. And they're like really weirdly written in this crazy strange font. And Ma'at is the Egyptian goddess of justice and truth, and she wears the feather of truth on her head, and that is what she weighs on her scales against our human hearts when we go to die. And I don't really work with the Egyptian pantheon, so to speak, but I have always really resonated with Ma'at. And I'm not actually sure where these 42 ideals came from. They're more modern, I believe, but I could be wrong about that. Wow, look at that. Anyhow, I'll read some of these. I honor virtue. I benefit with gratitude. I am peaceful. I respect the property of others. I affirm that all life is sacred. I give offerings that are genuine. I live in truth. I regard all altars with respect. I speak with sincerity. I consume only my fair share. I offer words of good intent. I relate in peace. That's like the first 12, I guess. That's not, like, that all sounds good to me. I am trustful in my relationships. I hold purity in high esteem. Still don't really know what that means. I still don't really know what that's about. I don't know. We're figuring that out. I can resonate. I can agree with all of those, other than I'm just not sure how I feel about purity, or if that's exactly the right word there, or what sort. I feel like you see, anything can be pure. Anything can be pure, and some things, when they're pure, are not good. And so I don't think it's necessarily good to value just purity as a thing, because purity isn't a thing, it's a characteristic of things. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. And then, okay, yeah, so then we have instructions on casting a circle, which I've, like, never looked at. Yeah, you know, it just tells me to use incense and candles and things, and then there's, like, 2 whole pages on how to do it, and I'm like, yo, get a stick, draw it in a circle, bam, you have a circle. Like, that's how I would write this now. Cakes and ale ceremony. Ooh, don't fall over, painting. Okay, cakes and ale ceremony. So here we go. This is our cakes and ale ceremony, 2-pager, front and back. And, like, I'm not even gonna read it, because I can tell you right now that my whole cakes and ale ceremony is like, oh shit, we just did a serious tarot reading, we should probably eat some chocolate to ground. Or like, oh man, that magic was crazy, let's have dinner. Like, I'm like, okay, we finished that, let's go eat something. Yeah, and I guess maybe if I were gonna do, part of this is just because I wrote all these things down, like, in this idea that I was gonna have this, thinking that I was gonna have this, like, coven, or this circle of witches meeting and practicing together, and that, of course, they would all resonate 100% with my methods and spells and things that I had written down, and would, like, want to do things my way, because why else would I have written them all down? Anyhow, I'm here to tell you that that's ridiculous, and that you should just start doing magic for you, or not like for, well, you know, whatever. Just start doing the magic that resonates with you now alone, and then you'll figure out sooner rather than later what actually resonates with you, because I spent a whole lot of time writing things down and not doing magic. Ritual for an Esbit. Yeah, there's like a whole, it's like, here's what you can wear, here's a suggestions for jewelry. Oh yeah, and I put like a whole symbol in there. This isn't actually a bad idea. This is a variation on a symbol. Take up the chalice and pass it around 3 times. The first time, thank the goddess for something over the past month, then drink. The second time, thank the goddess for something in the present, then drink. The third time, ask for the goddess's blessing or help or guidance in whatever is coming up over the next month or so. If you plan to work magic in the circle, mention it now, then drink. And then, yeah, okay, this is, it's very simple. It's nothing you couldn't find anywhere else. I guess I just wanted to write it down real pretty and have it in my book, which, by the way, like, that's really pretty, right? Look at those gel pens. Fun and glittery and shiny and things. Okay, and then, what's after that? Okay, we've got a cover page that says Samhain, and it's not very well decorated. And there's just a glittery spider web on the back of it. And then it says Samhain symbol. Oh, okay. So this I do actually. Give thanks for whatever you want or seems relevant. You may thank specific entities or simply express gratitude. And then 2, honor, mention any past loved ones you would like to honor. And then 3, boast, make a boast of any recent accomplishments and make a goal for moving forward. And this is just kind of slightly altered from the standard symbol, God's ancestors boast pattern, because every year I hold a Samhain symbol and dumb supper dinner party thing at my house, and I invite a whole bunch of people who are not necessarily witches or not necessarily pagans to come participate in this tradition with me. And so I think it's important to I use language in this that doesn't necessarily like require the participants to acknowledge the existence of a god or like the existence of like their ancestors' departed spirits being present or whatever. Like I think people can get something out of the symbol, whatever their belief system is. And so this one, I didn't know this was in here, and I haven't used it in here. I mean, I don't really read from it while I do it. I'm like, I know the symbol. But it's cool that it's written in there. Okay. Not magic. Yeah, this I don't do. Like, I do not magic. I believe in not magic. I'm wearing a lot of not magic. And I'm wearing a lot of not magic here, too. I forget how many knots Tamara said she tied in these one yen necklaces, but it was a lot. And it was some sort of sacred geometry number. I don't know, man. Anyhow, there's like this poem for what you say when you tie each of these 9 knots in this string, and I'm just like, that's not how I do not magic. That's just very ceremonial, and again, I do very folk magic-y stuff, and like anything that you would have to read out of a book, I'm like, I don't have time for this. And then we have methods of divination, use them wisely, and I think actually the only one that I've put in here. Okay, we have ethics of divination, and I'll read you what's on there. Be gentle, be open-minded, ask questions, respect privacy, honor confidentiality, ask permission, dedicate fully, and be honest. That all sounds totally reasonable to me. I wouldn't, like, when I think, I mean, again, like, my ethical practice for reading tarot for people or doing divination for people is, like, it's so, my ethics are so ingrained in my practice. Like, they're just a part of what I do. I don't have to think of them as, like, a list of, these are my ethics. But I do, like, I know immediately when something violates my divinatory ethics. One of my very best friends, pulled a card for me over text message the other day, like, without asking. Like, I was talking about some situation, and then she texted me a card. She texted me, she was like, I felt called to pull a card for you on this, and I pulled Judgment, and I was like, my reaction to that was twofold. One, because, like, I had actually been pulling Judgment for myself on that situation a bunch. And I was like, ugh, even you're getting the same card. And you didn't even know that, and you're getting the same card. But what I wrote back to her, I was like, one, I love you, and I believe that you just didn't know this, but please, 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 please don't ever pull cards for people without asking. It's a huge violation of, it's like going through people's drawers, you know? It's like going to somebody's house and, like, going through their drawers or their cabinets without asking. It's like, it's not like it's, you know, I might have said yes, and to her, I'm not actually sure if I would have said yes or not, because, like, I probably would have said, yeah, if you feel, like, we're good enough friends, and I trust her so much. Like, I wasn't mad that she pulled the card. I was just like, oh, wow, okay, I'm really glad that you did this for me and not, like, for somebody else. Like, please know. Please know that this is not not kosher, not a tarot best practice. Anyhow, so after that I have a double-sided page on astragalomancy or dice reading, which I've done like probably once around the same time that I wrote this page. And then we have a section called Poetry for Pagans. And I believe it only has one poem in it. Oh no, it has a few poems at the end. Oh, it has a bunch of poems. Okay. Well, anyhow, this poem I'm sure you've heard around here before. This is Mythopoeia. You look at trees and label them just so, for trees are trees and growing is to grow. You walk the earth and tread with solemn pace one of the many minor globes of space. It's a 150-line poem. It's more than that a little bit. It's really, really beautiful. It's my favorite poem. It's my most sacred text. I have the whole thing memorized. This is absolutely 100% still a part of my practice. This is not the only book that I've copied this poem into. And you can just see, like, my hands were so... Oh yeah, you can see how quickly I gave up. I started doing this calligraphy and then I very quickly gave that up. I was like, oh, let's just get it in here. Yeah, and I don't look at this poem in this book ever. Like I said, I don't really use this book ever, but I absolutely stand by the inclusion of that poem, and I would include it 1,000 times over if I could. Charge of the Goddess, and I believe that I would have used the one, yes, the version adapted by Starhawk, and I absolutely stand by this. I'm gonna read just a part of it. Let my worship, this is my favorite part. Let my worship be in the heart that rejoices, for behold, all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. Let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence within you. And you who seek to know me, know that the seeking and yearning will avail you not unless you know the mystery. For if that which you seek you find not within yourself, you will never find it without. And there's more. Like, I resonate with this whole thing, but this can't just be an hour and a half long video of me reading sacred texts, so we're just gonna move on. I love you, world, and I love the songs you sing. I'm in love with the universe, I'm in love with everything. So that's in there, that's just a little chant that I wrote. I will run far and I will be free, just like a river runs down to the sea. And then what's this one? Oh, bring me peace, bring me abundance, bring me joy, bring me fulfillment. Bring me all that I need to survive and succeed. That's another one that I wrote, but I forget the melody. Yeah, okay, well that was that whole book. We just went through the whole thing. And now you know a lot more about me. That was 58 minutes of recording, so I hope we got something good out of that. Thank you so much for being here with me and walking through that with me. That was kind of a lot of information. I hope that that was the sort of information that you guys have been wanting and requesting, and not just the sort of information that I was like, let's do this, dump on you, dump all the information on the people. So yeah, that's my old book of Light and Shadow, and that's what I think of it now. I would be really interested to know what in here did or didn't resonate with you, or what that I said did or didn't resonate with you, and like how your path has changed over the years, or like if you happened upon something that worked for you and still works for you. Like, I'd love to know about that too. I'm just really interested in everybody's practices and, you know, and what we all do to stay afloat in this crazy magical world. And yeah, thank you for joining me here today, and if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't yet. Hit that little alarm bell as well if you want to be notified when the next video comes out. I do post fairly frequently. Please do let me know in the comments below what you'd like to see more of, and what you resonated with, what you didn't. And if you have anything that you'd want to talk about more privately, like, feel free to message me on Instagram. I really do keep up with my messages there, and I love getting to know you guys and meet you guys on here and there. And hey, and join me for morning ritual. I'm actually about to go downstairs and do morning ritual, like, now, because it's probably time. And That's how early, that's how much of a go-getter I'm being today. Anyhow, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you soon.